Gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment. Point of order reserved by the gentleman from Arizona.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute.
The amendment will be considered as read. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been a bizarre conversation, and it's very difficult to engage with it if you're actually engaged in any kind of reality about what gender-affirming care is and who trans people are. And we've had all kinds of things be said here, words be used. Republicans are bringing yet another despicable bill that attacks the transgender community. And the gentlelady who introduced the bill is calling practices barbaric, but she can't tell us even where the definition she introduced came from. What is barbaric is this legislation. What is barbaric is targeting trans kids in this country who are not doing you any harm. Show me a trans kid who's doing you harm. And then tell me how many of you are parents that would do anything that you could to protect your kids and to make sure that they didn't commit suicide, that they were actually able to engage in the world in a healthy way. Tell me what you wouldn't do for your children. Because when you introduce legislation like this, it is not only stupid legislation, it is cruel, it is mean, and it interferes with your own conservative principles. You really want to take away the ability to allow parents to make decisions about their own kids' medical situation with their doctor? That's what Republicans want to do? Now, I know we're all inconsistent in different ways, and there are people on that side who have been consistent on issues of debt and deficit. Both of us on either side of the aisle have taken up issues of privacy. This is a giant inconsistency in the Republican Party right now. You are supposed to be the party of limited government that doesn't get in the way of parents making decisions for their own kids. Remember parental rights? Remember individual rights? But that's not what you're doing, and don't just take it from me. In 2018, when the anti-trans political attacks were beginning, Barbara Comstock, who is a Virginia Republican who served in Congress, many of us knew her, said, quote, "It opens a Pandora's box when you don't allow the parents and the doctors to make this decision." Who are you to get in the way of a parent making a decision about their own kid's health? And you know, when you talk about, I wrote some things down as you were talking because this whole thing is ridiculous. You want to talk about the industrial medical complex in healthcare? Well, let's talk about that. Why don't we go after those for-profit private insurance companies that have taken over healthcare and made 1 in 3 Americans have medical debt? You want to talk about irreversible psychological damage, another thing that you over there are trying to say about our kids and what we make decisions about? Well, let's talk about cutting nutrition assistance. You want to cut nutrition assistance, $2 a meal, from kids who are hungry. That's what your big bad betrayal bill does. You want to talk about irreversible psychological damage? Let's talk about child abuse. Let's talk about separating moms and dads from their kids, immigrants, locking them up indefinitely. That's what you just put in the bill that we voted through the Judiciary Committee. So what the hell are we doing here, Mr. Chairman? Let's be a little consistent and precise and stop attacking trans kids. That's all this does. Now, I do have an amendment here, but it was all, I just have been listening to this and I cannot believe what this conversation has been about. My amendment would allow medical professionals to continue delivering health care to young trans people when it is considered a best practice. It recognizes that this care is safe, widely accepted, appropriate, medically necessary, and most importantly, it allows transgender people to live safely and authentically as themselves. Any parent over there Do you want kids to commit suicide? Is that what you'd like? Do you want them to not get the counseling that they need? Because that's what gender-affirming care is. In very rare cases, there is surgery that is prescribed. But you guys make it sound like this is some giant, terrible thing that parents are doing for their kids. You're parents. Why are you getting in the way? Why are you letting government get in the way of parents making decisions about their own kids with their own doctors? It is absolutely outrageous, and you should, at a minimum, vote for this amendment. And the chairman is always generous with me because we have spoken about this issue. And he knows damn well what it means to be a parent and to protect your child. And I'm gonna do that every frickin' day that I'm here in this committee when you bring up these ridiculous, barbaric bills that target trans kids.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Wyoming.
First of all, we're not claiming kids are doing us harm. We are trying to protect them from harm. And protecting children is not inconsistent with our conservative philosophy. We are not mobilizing against our children. We are mobilizing to protect them. We are not demonizing children. We are trying to protect them from people who seek to use medical intervention to erase the essence of their very being. I want to remind the committee that this bill, H.R. 3492, is actually an amendment to existing law, 18 U.S.C. Code Section 116, which was introduced by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, and it was entitled Female Genital Mutilation. And the very purpose of it was to prohibit female genital mutilation. It was passed. It was a bipartisan bill that was passed. This is merely an amendment to that bill.
Would the gentlelady yield?
No, I'm not finished yet.
I wanted to ask you if you know what female genital mutilation is.
I am not finished. If you will remember, at the time that this was brought forward in 2020 and even its predecessor in the 1990s, it was because of the issue of young girls, young women who were having, their parents were the ones who were taking them to have the female genital mutilation. So when you talk about this being a parental right to obtain medical intervention for their minor child, the very law, the very statute that we are amending specifically identifies and recognizes the fact that sometimes parents don't have the best interests of their children at heart, and that's why on a bipartisan basis in 2020 there was a law that was passed that made female genital mutilation illegal. So I want to make sure that people understand that that is the very purpose of the bill that we are considering as an amendment to an existing statute. I also want to point out that throughout history we have examples where the medical community has been so blatantly wrong in terms of the advice that they were giving. For example, in the 1930s, recommending that women smoke cigarettes, it will make them feel better while they're pregnant. We have the situation of the radium, recommending the use of radium, lobotomies from the 1930s through the 1950s. The gentleman who invented lobotomies actually received the Nobel Prize in medicine for that. We don't do lobotomies anymore. We recognize how barbaric that procedure is. Hormone replacement therapy without risk disclosures, forced coerced sterilization. We have a history of that. We just went through COVID-19, for goodness sakes. We had Anthony Fauci lying to us every which way from Tuesday about that masks are unnecessary and that we need to have masks and that you have to have the vaccine and the vaccine isn't going to cause any problems. And now we have all of the evidence demonstrating that the vaccines cause incredible medical problems for a certain subset of our population. Yet we were lied to over and over and over and over again just during COVID-19, and it was the medical field that did it. It's why there is such a distrust in the medical field right now. So when you talk about how there are these medical protocols and this is best practices, that's most likely based upon what is the Dutch protocol. The Dutch protocol that has been cited so many times by Democrats has been entirely discounted as being a situation where they actually cooked the books. You want to know how they cooked the books? According to a 2023 study, the premise of the Dutch study is flawed on account of 3 methodological biases that undermine the research. These include 1, dropping subjects from the study who experienced unsuccessful results. Number 2, altering the gender dysphoria scoring mechanism after the treatments were conducted in order to guarantee a significant post-surgical drop in gender dysphoria scores. And number 3, compromising findings of psychological benefits of hormone therapy by conflating the results of several treatments and factors such as gender reassignment therapy and psychological maturation. The results of this Dutch study have never been replicated despite the fact that there have been many efforts to do so. So when you talk about best practices, when you talk about the parents being the ones who get to make this decision and then attack us and make it as though we don't care about children, that we don't care about their well-being, the very purpose of this bill is to protect children from the people who would harm them through this type of medical intervention. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman. The lady yields back. The ranking member is recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thank you kindly. I rise to oppose the amendment. The gentlelady from Wyoming, I'm afraid, makes a series of arguments.
You're supporting Jayapal.
Oh, we're still on the Jayapal amendment. I support very strongly the Jayapal amendment, and thank the gentlelady for offering such an eloquent defense of it. But in answer to the criticism from the gentlelady from Wyoming, she makes a series of arguments that completely contradict her own position. She says, for example, that there have been all kinds of changes in our understanding of vaccines, which sounds like it would be an argument against having a national compulsory mandatory vaccine for everybody in the country, which of course we didn't have during COVID-19. But the logic of what she's doing today would lead us precisely to that, because it would say, let's let the federal government decide for everybody. If you don't want your kids to have the COVID-19 vaccine, too bad for you. The federal government now has the power to do it and is invited to do it because they're saying that the United States House of Representatives and Marjorie Taylor Greene love your children more than you do. They are going to make decisions in the best interest of your child that you wouldn't make for yourself. We're going to leave it up to Marjorie Taylor Greene to do it. And that's just absolutely appalling. And so the gentlelady protests that they care about the kids more than those who would do them harm. I wonder who she's referring to, because she's got to be referring to the parents, because none of this happens without the authorization of the parents. In pretty much every state I'm aware of, I stand to be corrected if there's some state that gives it to some third-party body, but I think it's the parents who decide. But you want to overturn the authority of the parents to make medical decisions for their own children on the grounds that you're going to protect the children against the parents, which cuts completely against, I think, everything that you and other Republicans were saying about the vaccines. You didn't want government at any level, much less the federal level, deciding what was best in the best interest of the children. So this leads me to believe this profound, stunning contradiction that you don't really have the best interests of these children at heart. I'm much more drawn to what Ms. Jayapal has suggested in her amendment, which is we operate on the principle that parents are going to be acting in the best interest of the children. In fact, that's the standard in any family courtroom in the country when it comes to an award of custody. What's in the best interest of the children? And it's going to be one parent or the other, except in the most extreme and extraordinary case, right? So now Ms. Jayapal says, let the parents trust the doctors. The families that go through this question go right to the doctors and physicians and the psychiatrists to find out what is the best evidence available about what's going on. And now we take what is undoubtedly an extremely difficult situation, as all family medical situations are, and we compound it with the intrusion of the federal government for totally exploitative partisan purposes. And that is a scandal and an outrage. So let's give the families some room to make their own decisions. Let's let the states regulate medicine taking place within their own communities. Let's let the medical associations advise the state legislatures, and we don't need Big Brother doing this. If we want to help the families of America, let's not throw 15 million people off Medicaid. Let's not be slashing SNAP benefits and cutting child nutrition in the country. And I'll yield the remainder of my time to the offerer of the amendment, the distinguished gentlelady from Washington.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I wanted to just have a conversation with you because also, if you noticed, and if we went back and looked at the transcript, the gentlelady from Wyoming actually said, we can't trust parents. In your comments, you said parents make decisions that are wrong for the kids. So I feel like you kind of answered the question for me about whether or not we should trust parents. And all of a sudden, the Republican Party, that was the party of saying limited government, we don't want you telling us what to do as parents, all of a sudden now, you are saying that you don't trust the parents. It's clear to me that you don't trust the medical establishment, even though every major medical organization, the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, all of these organizations are saying that this is care that is supported, and yet you're saying you don't trust them either. So I think what the gentlelady is saying is she's the only one that can be trusted to make the decisions. The Republican Party is the only one that can be trusted because you can't trust the parents and you can't trust the medical associate. Is that your understanding as well?
I think we all have to trust Marjorie Taylor Greene is the point of the legislation here. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, without objection, I would like to enter into the record a systematic review of outcomes of hormonal treatments in youths with gender dysphoria from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden.
Without objection.
The independent review of gender identity services for children and young people by Dr. Hilary Cass, also known as the Cass Review from the UK.
Objection.
And the treatment of pediatric gender dysphoria, review of the evidence and best practices from our own Department of Health and Senior Services dated May 1st, 2025, all of which refute the outdated, bogus, and methodologically biased so-called science embodied in the so-called WPATH and Dutch protocol. And finally, I'd like to introduce a consensus statement on the management of intersex disorders by Hughes et al., published in the Archives of Disease in Childhood. Too many times our Democrat colleagues like to conflate the idea of gender identity with these unfortunate children who have genetic sexual birth defects, and that likewise I would like to, without objection, enter into the record.
Without objection. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield to Ms. Hageman.
Thank you. I just want to read the current statute, 18 U.S.C. Section 116. Whoever knowingly, being the parent, guardian, or caretaker of a person who has not attained the age of 18 years, facilitates or consents to the female genital mutilation of such person. And then it goes on to say, shall be fined under this title, imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. Again, this was a bill that was authored by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. So obviously, and it also goes on to say in subsection C, it shall not be a defense to a prosecution under this section that female genital mutilation is required as a matter of religion, custom, tradition, ritual, or standard practice. So obviously, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee recognized that there were circumstances under which the parents also could be actually guilty of doing things that were really not in the best interest and were very destructive to their children. So again, I'm just reading from 18 U.S.C.
Would the gentlelady yield?
In a moment, I will.
Okay.
18 U.S.C. Section 116, Representative Lee obviously recognized that there were circumstances where it was actually not only did she not trust the parents, she thought that they ought to be prosecuted for having their child doing female genital mutilation on their children. So when you say we don't trust the parents, for the most part, I do trust the parents, I do. But I think that there are also circumstances where I do not believe these kinds of life-altering decisions should be made by minors. As they are adults, that is a different circumstance. But we are talking here specifically about minors, and I think it's very important that we not conflate the two. So again, the existing statute that we are amending would fine and imprison parents for kind of the same thing. So with that,
the
yes, I will
gentlelady
yield.
I would just wanted to know who, if the parents shouldn't make these decisions, who should? I mean, who gets to make the decision?
Well, the bill
Nobody?
says that we cannot do these treatments on minors.
So no
That's-
matter
that's
what a
the
parent
purpose.
thinks,
That's right.
this bill would not allow parents to make any decision about gender-affirming care as it relates to their children in consultation with their doctors.
It's specifically defined in the bill.
Yeah,
That's
so, but
exactly
for
right.
gender-affirming care, as you talk about
That's
it
exactly right.
in the bill, you're saying parents would not be allowed and would actually have to allow the federal government, would have to yield to the federal government, saying the federal government is going to make all these decisions about anything that qualifies as gender-affirming care.
Anything that's identified and
Right,
defined in this bill.
and are you aware that in gender-affirming care, are you aware of the things that are contained within gender-affirming care?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you know that counseling and mental health is part of gender-affirming care, correct?
That's not what's forbidden in this bill.
But it is
That
a
is-
part
but
of
that's-
gender-affirming
but that's
care.
not-
You have
but
a
that's
very
not what's
broad,
forbidden in this bill.
but you have a very
That
broad.
is not what's forbidden in this bill. Don't distort what's in the bill.
I'll go I'm not.
Don't argue with me by
Time belongs
distorting
to
what's
the
in the bill.
gentlelady from Wyoming.
So can I engage with another question here with you?
Yes, as
Okay,
long as
great.
you don't
So-
distort what's in the bill.
No, I'm not going to. I'm going to go back and find the references for what I'm talking about. You talked about female genital mutilation, but your own bill defines female genital mutilation as any procedure performed for non-medical reasons. So in your own bill, you are recognizing that medical procedures are not contained within the definition of female genital mutilation. And yet now you're expanding that definition. And I gotta say, if Sheila Jackson Lee were here, she would, I don't know how to recreate how she would be. I think she's probably rolling in her grave right now. God rest her soul.
Well, you know,
Because
she's not
she
here.
was
What I'm doing
talking
is
about
just
something
going on
very
what she wrote.
specific.
I'm
And-
just going on what she wrote.
But your own bill makes the distinction of what female genital mutilation is, and it doesn't apply to this. So I yield back.
The bill here is very clearly genital and bodily mutilation of a minor, chemical castration of a minor. That is what is prohibited by this bill. That's what's
Okay.
prohibited. So you can't bring in all of these other things and pretend that they're in this bill, because they're not. That's what's in this bill. That's what this bill
The gentlelady
prohibits.
is actually the one who's bringing in a lot of things that are not contained in any medical definitions and assessments. In fact, you introduced definitions that we're not even sure where those came from. I yield, if the time is done.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Alabama yields back. Question occurs. Gentlelady from Vermont.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, what I find in these conversations, and we've had these debates over transgender Americans repeatedly in this committee. And inevitably, it comes back to somebody on the other side of the aisle hurling invectives at us, saying that this is left-wing ideology. And I just want to bring us back to a hearing that we had on transgender Americans in this committee, in which sitting at the table there was a woman who identified as a conservative Republican Christian. That's how she self-identified. And she was saying to all of you who were on the committee at that time, it was last Congress, and she basically said, "Why are you up in my business? Why are you trying to make decisions for me and my child?" And earlier today, and I know we've been here a long time, earlier today, my colleague, Mr. Roy, said, you know, we shouldn't be busybody legislators all up in everybody's business. And he said, we already have too many damn laws. What are we doing here? And I'm just sitting here thinking about the courage that it took for that woman to come here to say to all of you a Republican Christian conservative, that this actually isn't about politics. This isn't about party. This isn't about left-wing ideology. This is about her job as a parent, making sure she's getting the health care that her kid needs and deserves. And she was completely and totally open with us about the kind of despair that her child was in, the kind of anxiety and depression her child was racked with. And she said it was difficult for her. It was difficult for her and her family, especially in the community that they lived in, to stand with their child and to make this decision. And so I've just had it. I've had it with it constantly coming back to somehow that this is a Democratic issue. There are transgender people living in every single district here, and they identify as Republican and they identify as Democratic, and some of them don't vote at all because they can't stand that their government is being weaponized against them. So can we stop this nonsense? You want to have control over our conversations with our doctors. You want to meddle in the relationship that parents have with their child and with their doctors. And it is so difficult week after week after week for you to continue to attack such a small minority of people in this country that just want to live their lives. I don't know what the obsession is, honestly. Because I can tell you, the transgender people in my district, they don't want your help, member from Wyoming. They don't want your help. And their parents sure as hell do not want your help. They want to be able to make decisions in conjunction with their children's doctors. And I just find it so outrageous and insulting that you come here and you claim that this is about a partisan issue. It's not. It's about any child being able to get the health care that their parent deems is necessary to keep them alive. I do not know why, with all of the issues that we have in healthcare right now, from the price of insulin to the fact that we are rolling back all the work that was done on inhalers, to PBMs, to the fact that healthcare systems across this country are falling apart, that this is the topic, once again, that you choose to take up. It makes no sense that this is what we're spending our time at. And I can tell you, because I talk to parents, not just in my district, but who reach out to me who say, thank goodness someone is standing up for us in that committee, because once again, they're demonizing us and dehumanizing us in the language that they're using. Thank goodness you're standing up for us. They can't stand the fact that their own government is spending precious time in committee, once again, weaponizing government against them, and they just want to get the health care that they need and deserve. I yield back.
Back, gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I've been pondering the question that the gentlelady from Washington posed. What would we not do for our children? That's an important question. Well, for one thing, we would not mutilate them. When I was 6, I wanted to be a pirate. I was fortunate enough not to have parents who would have removed a leg and an eye so that I could feel better about myself when I was a child. I don't think I would have felt the same way turning 18. So yes, parents are the fundamental custodians of their children. They have a fundamental right to make the decisions over their children's welfare, health, and upbringing. But there are certain things we don't allow parents to do. You can't starve your kids to death. You can't beat your kids to death. You can't withhold life-saving procedures from your kids. Such acts are considered child endangerment. And if you cross that line, society steps in to protect the basic welfare of the child. Now, that all changes at 18. We've decided as a society that at 18, you can now take control of your own welfare and your own future. Your parents no longer control your welfare, and as a society, we no longer act in place of your parents on these questions. At 18, you're a grown-up. If you want to be a pirate, you can be a pirate. All you have to do is find a doctor willing to take off your leg and poke out an eye. There are cases of grown-ups who choose to be lizards. And they have their tongue split, their horns implanted, and all sorts of other mutilations that wouldn't be permissible even if the parents decreed it. But at 18, if you want to be a different sex than you are, you can be. At 18, these decisions pass to you. But until then, we give broad latitude to parents as long as their decisions do not imperil the life of the child or expose them to permanent life-altering deformations. And this is such a matter, and it stuns so many people that the Democrats can't see that. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition to the bill, and I also yield my time, or yield some time, to the gentlelady from Washington.
The question on the table is the amendment from the gentlelady from Washington.
Yes, which I know Mr. Johnson supports. Thank you so much for yielding. Mr. McClintock, I think you were saying that if a parent makes a decision for gender-affirming care in consultation with their kid's doctor, that could be considered mutilation. And I think the examples you gave don't reflect the reality, because you talked about beating kids and things that all the medical associations agree are abuse of kids. What you're doing is adding a word here, mutilation, to your perspective of what gender-affirming care is. That is just your perspective. It is not medically based fact. And I think you have to consider, and I think the Republican Party has to consider the struggle that you're having right now about the size and scope of government. And I think the conservatives are losing. You're certainly losing on the size of spending, because you kicked 16 million Americans off of health care, cut nutrition assistance by $300 billion, and set up massive cuts to Social Security. Also, you could give $5 trillion in tax breaks to the wealthiest billionaires and corporations, and oh, by the way, increase the deficit by trillions. And at least my friends Mr. Massey and Mr. Roy are consistent on this. But with this bill, you're really in very dangerous territory, because the party that believes in individual rights and parental rights wants big government to get right in there between a parent and their child's doctor and assign words that have no medical basis to procedures that you simply don't like. You don't like them. You don't want them for your kids. I get that. Listen, this was all pretty new to me when I first started to learn about it for my own family's personal reasons. And there was a lot to learn. And I would say to all the Americans out there, I empathize with something that is new and that Republicans are just doing everything they can to scare you. And so talk to people, read actual studies, don't listen to them. Like, go and research what gender-affirming care is. Find out that, first of all, it includes lots of things, and they are all care that has been approved by major medical organizations. And understand that surgery is a very tiny piece of it. That's what we spent most of this time talking about on this committee. But at the core, this is a cruel, cruel campaign of misinformation, of fear-mongering, of distorting what healthcare looks like for a population that is less than 1/2 of 1% of all Americans. That's what we've spent this whole time talking about. And so I want to go back to what my amendment would do. My amendment would allow medical professionals to continue delivering health care to young trans people when it is considered a best practice. And my amendment recognizes that that care is safe, it's widely accepted, it's appropriate, it's medically necessary, and most importantly, it allows transgender people to live safely and authentically. Now, I can tell you for a fact that these decisions about care in trans families are made really thoughtfully and with a lot of debate and discussion and deliberation. And all of the trans young people that I know, and I know many of them, go through months or years of consultations with their parents, with their medical providers, before they're even able to access care. And there is no standard of care out there that recommends any medical interventions before puberty. So I would just say to people who are afraid, I understand why you're afraid, because my colleagues on the other side are doing everything they can to make you afraid and to try and blame trans kids for every woe that you face. And let me tell you, trans kids did not raise your rent. Trans kids did not make your grocery prices go higher. Billionaires did. Millionaires did. Republicans who continue to funnel tax breaks to those people did that. So just leave our kids alone and let parents make the decisions that they need to make about their kids' health care with their doctors, by themselves, without big government making those decisions for them. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The question occurs on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Washington. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. In opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not adopted.
Could we have a recorded vote, please,
Recorded
Mr.
vote being requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan?
No.
Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Issa? Mr. Biggs? Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock? Mr. McClintock votes no. Mr. Tiffany? Mr. Massey? Mr. Massey votes no. Mr. Roy? Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Klein? Mr. Klein votes no. Mr. Gooden? Mr. Van Drew? Mr. Nels? Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore votes no. Mr. Kiley? Ms. Hageman? Ms. Hageman votes no. Ms. Lee? Mr. Hunt? Mr. Fry? Mr. Grothman? Mr. Grothman votes no. Mr. Knott? Mr. Harris? Mr. Harris votes no. Mr. Onder? Mr. Onder votes no. Mr. Schmidt? Mr. Schmidt votes no. Mr. Gill? Mr. Baumgardner? Mr. Raskin? Mr. Raskin votes aye. Mr. Nadler? Mr. Nadler votes aye. Ms. Lofgren? Mr. Cohen? Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson votes aye. Mr. Swalwell? Mr. Liu? Ms. Jayapal? Ms. Jayapal votes aye. Mr. Correa? Ms. Scanlon? Mr. Neguse? Ms. McBath? Ms. Ross? Ms. Ross votes aye. Ms. Ballant? Ms. Ballant votes aye. Mr. Garcia? Mr. Garcia votes aye. Ms. Kamlager-Dove? Ms. Kamlager-Dove votes aye. Mr. Moskowitz? Mr. Goldman? Ms. Crockett? Mr. Issa, you're not recorded. Mr. Issa votes no. Mr. Chairman, there are 8 ayes and 12 noes.
The amendment is not adopted. Who seeks recognition? Gentlelady from